Radio 418.
What's up, beautiful people? This is John Montagna, and you're listening to a very special edition of Radio 418. I've never done anything like this before, but I've never had an experience like this before. Obviously, if you're paying attention, you know that Tom Petty passed away last night, and if you're like me, if you're a music snob and you know what's good, this is a sad bit of news. Coming on the heels of another bit of sad news, the other top news story yesterday, yet another mass shooting in America, and I'm not going to pontificate on gun control or any of that stuff because I just don't have the patience or the time to reiterate it again, and I'm not really, I'm not capable of saying anything new or profound that hasn't been said already by people that are way more informed and articulate than I am. But it just seems to me that us music lovers, because I'm a musician, but first and foremost, I'm a music lover. I love music so much that I do it all the time. That's how I look at myself. And it just seems that we are really taking a hit. Financially, emotionally, we seem to be losing our way. We seem to be giving way too much power and control to the wrong people. And the wrong entities seem to be running things. And now when a guy like Tom Petty, who was the real deal, goes so young and so unexpectedly, this is really throwing me for a loop here. And the only thing I thought to do was to reach out to the community. And I wanted to talk to my friend Benny Landa, who's a guitarist, dear friend I've known for a while, and he seemed like the cat to talk to. So I've never done this before. Just did a call and recorded it and posted it, the next day. So I'm dialing.
Right there.
Yo, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I think I got everything working now.
Excellent.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you're home?
I'm home. I'm in front of the computer, and I got the albums in front of me.
Okay.
And I'm ready to talk about the life.
Yeah. Well, before I got you on here, I was just kind of pontificating a little bit about it. It seems like us music lovers, because like I said, I'm first and foremost a music lover. Before I was a musician, before I decided to actually do this full time, I was just obsessed with music to begin with, just as a listener, and that hasn't left me.
Me too.
And it just seems like between Tom leaving us and the shooting in Vegas, it just seems like we're really taking a hit.
Unbelievable. As
music lovers and as people that are passionate about this art. And it just, I'm trying not to go down a whole rabbit hole about like technology and how we've handed it over to like the tech companies and the telecom companies to give us our music, and how that really hasn't panned out the way I would like.
Right.
Have you seen the Tower Records documentary yet?
It was on cable, right?
Well, it's I believe it's on Amazon Instant Video.
I have seen it. I don't remember a lot of it, but I've seen bits and pieces of it. Yeah.
Did you get did it make you nostalgic at all?
Absolutely. I used to go to Tower Records like every weekend and scour the cassettes and CDs and see if I could find something rare that I've been looking for a while. It was a ritual. And also Revolver Records, all of them.
Right. Right. They're all,
Yeah.
I mean, how many of them are still there? Is Bleecker Bob's gone?
I think they're gone. Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah. I mean,
It's like some Japanese restaurant now.
right. I mean, I just couldn't help but, I mean, I was almost like, it was making me very emotional because that was my ritual too. What was your location?
4th Street and Broadway.
Thank you. I mean, I used to go into the Village on weekend, living in Brooklyn in those days, going into the city was like a big deal still, right?
Absolutely. And when I lived in L.A., I lived on North Clark, right up the hill from the Whiskey.
Yeah.
And I went to the Tower Records over there, which was like right around the corner. That was 1993.
Okay. I think I went to that. I think I went to the L.A. Tower when I was out there with Francis Dunnery in 1988. And I don't remember differentiating like, oh, this is the L.A. store. It was just...
It was Tower.
It was just Tower. You go in the Tower and you're going to leave with something. I still have some of my receipts from like the last couple of times I shopped there. I remember the first long tour with Alan Parsons that we did.
Right.
We did a 3-week run in Mexico. And I knew, 3 weeks on the road, I'm going to need some music to listen to. And I remember I was playing at the bitter end one night, and then we were going to be all going out for dinner afterwards. So we finished the gig at the bitter end, and the people that were going to meet us at the restaurant were on their way. And I had like 15 minutes to kill or 20 minutes to kill, and I ran down the street to Tower and snatched up like 3 or 4 discs. One of them was Tribalistas. I think there was a 10. I think that was when I got the 10cc How Dare You album.
I got to catch up on them.
Yeah.
I really love that 10cc.
Yeah.
I love that band.
Yeah. Well, I was going down the English rock rabbit hole, having just got the Parsons gig. I was really going down the rabbit hole of like the English bands from the 70s, the late 70s. And I just remember getting back to the restaurant and meeting up with everybody with my big yellow bag with like, oh yeah, I just went on this, the shopping spree. And I still have the receipt from that night, and these are the kind of memories that Apple Music isn't going to give you.
Absolutely not.
Spotify is not going to give you these kinds of sense memories.
And what I find is, like, I'll be looking, sampling an album and clicking around, and all of a sudden I'm like, I hit something wrong, and I'm like, in Apple Music, and I don't want it. I just want to listen to something and see if I want to buy it.
Right.
It's like technology is great, but it can actually be a bit of a nuisance.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Remember, like when a record was coming out, like I'll give you an example: Band on the Run.
Well, okay.
I remember when I was 8. I was like something like 8 years old.
Yeah.
And Band on the Run was coming out. I'd wait for the record store to open. Be like the first kid, walking in the place when it opened.
Yeah.
And there was that mystery of like, wow, is it going to be a good record? Things weren't leaking all over the place. I mean, yeah, they do a promo, they play something to promo a track or whatever, That's always happened, but it was just like the mystery, and the anxiety of that record coming out. It's like it's all gone.
It's interesting you use the term anxiety. I mean,
it's anxiety.
But what? It wasn't. I think it wasn't such a huge investment. If you bought the album and it sucked, it wasn't like you were out $15 or $20. It was not that big a deal.
The album you thought that sucked was great years later when you got a little older.
Thank you. That happened to me. That happened to me with Harmony Row, the Jack Bruce album.
Right.
I remember when senior year of high school was when I got my first CD player. I was getting ready to go to Berkeley, and I got my little boom box with a CD player in it, and I started buying CDs. I had a shoe box with like a dozen CDs in them, right? And that
Love
was
that.
when Polydor was re-releasing all of the Jack Bruce albums, and I'd gotten the Question of Time, which was the new one he had just put out. And then I got Songs for a Tailor, which sounded, it was like a sort of early version of Question of Time. I remember thinking that. And
With Chris Spedding on guitar.
Chris Spedding, exactly. And then I got Harmony Row, and that record really threw me for a loop. I was like, what the fuck is this? This weird, like, atonal. I mean, Chris Spedding's on that record, too. And it was just this
He was
weird,
the man.
yeah, and it was just all this, like, atonal, 12-tone stuff. I was like, what the hell? And...
Yeah.
But it never occurred to me to get rid of the album because I didn't like it. I hung on to it, and now it's one of my favorite albums of all time. It grew on me.
Yeah, I got to get that one. In fact, sometime today I'll probably download it.
Yeah.
Now the thing about downloading for me is that I'm not that you asked, but
Yeah, no, please.
but like on if I'm a pretty anti-Spotify guy.
Okay, why specifically? We won't get off too much.
Because because of the whole thing about artists not getting paid.
Right. Just
paid
on
right.
okay, so on principle.
This bothers me. So when I download something, like people go, when they call me for a gig, do you have a Spotify list? And I'm like, well, why don't you just send me the tunes and the charts?
Right.
It's like, and if I buy an album, I go to iTunes and buy an album, or I order a CD. I buy a used CD off Amazon or a new CD.
Yeah.
Of course, the Beatles stuff came out. I just went right to Amazon.
Yeah.
Because at least iTunes is legal. It's like
Right.
it's like people buy my album. I know I'm going to get like the bigger percentage of what it costs.
You're on there through CD Baby.
I'm on CD Baby, and I'm on iTunes. And they put you on iTunes, Amazon.
Yeah.
And all the places. I mean, there's places to buy albums and songs that I never heard of. I'm like, who are you?
I know. It's so strange. Well,
it's like, and am I getting screwed here? It's like,
it's funny. I put my own albums out so infrequently at this point. That will change with time once the band is rolling and all that kind of business, and I'm recording more often. I don't think of myself. I'm not enough of a recording artist yet to where I think of myself as an artist getting screwed on iTunes and all that.
Sure.
But I'm conscious enough about it that, like, with XTC, for example, I will go out of my.
I need to catch up on.
Oh, dude, yeah, sure.
I know.
I go out of my way to order the XTC stuff off of a website called Burning Shed in the UK.
Burning Shed.
Yeah, and it's a website that specializes in like a lot of prog and English stuff, and they have a direct deal with Andy Partridge. And like I wrote to them on Twitter, like, if I order XTC stuff from you, is this the best place to order XTC? Like, will most of the money go to Andy? And they said, yes, this is the way to go if you want to support Andy, and thank you. So the fact that A, that's the deal, and B, that they responded to me immediately, like, I think that's the coolest thing in the world. So I try to be...
Also,
sorry. No, go ahead.
I did a covers EP. Came out a couple of years ago, which you heard some of it.
Yeah.
And you have to get the licensing to the songs you're doing. And I did a Johnny Winter tune.
Yeah.
And it was a tune that he actually wrote. He did a lot of covers of blues stuff, and it was from the rock era.
Yeah.
Johnny Winter. And so I made damn sure that I got the right, because I didn't, the records were like on Columbia or something.
Yeah.
So you look it up on Harry Fox, or is that what it is?
Yeah.
Or one of those, and all kinds of stuff comes up, and so I emailed his guitar player manager, Paul Nelson, and I just said, look, I covered a Johnny Winter tune. What's the, publishing company?
Right.
And he told me, and it was done, and it was simple. But that was pretty easy.
Right.
I mean, the whole task of doing that for a whole album is a little hard.
Yeah. It's still very confusing to me. That's why I haven't recorded.
Too Young was real confusing.
Yeah. I just but it just seems like I'm still, like I said, I'm not considering myself a recording artist full time yet. I have a few discs out there. I'm not even thinking of that. I'm thinking still just as a fan. I really miss the thing of just going to the store and browsing and bringing the thing home, and oh man, I can't wait to get this thing hunted. iTunes is convenient. You see it on the computer. I'll get it. But I got to tell you what, man.
Not the same.
It's no. There's nothing to hold. There's no physical item to hold. And now what's happening is, like, every time the operating system gets updated, and some of you tech people out there listening are probably going like, well, dude, it's not that freaking hard. But you
guys don't know what they're talking about.
You know what? Fine. Back in the day, didn't matter how fucking stupid you were, you could put a record on and not have it be an issue. You didn't need a degree.
Just needed a good needle.
You just needed, you needed both hands, and you could listen to your music anywhere, anytime. And I went on a rant on an episode a couple of weeks ago about this. Like,
love those rants.
Well, thank you. I mean, like, I used to go to Wilburys on Ralph Avenue in Canarsie when we lived in...
I know, I remember it well.
Right, over by South Shore High School, right. And that was when I used to take my allowance money and go. I'm a little younger than you, so this was in like the early 80s. I was like 10, 11. I would go and I remember buying the Electric Avenue single, okay? I remember Come Dancing. There's like a very short window of time of 45s that I have from Wilburys, and I still have them today, and they still play anytime, anywhere, whenever I want. I don't have to worry about, like, signing in with a password.
And if someone gave it to you, you got to get their password.
Right. It's right. Exactly. I'm going to put it out there that maybe this computer music thing is, yes, it's one other option, but it maybe it's just its time has come and gone, and maybe
I really hope so. Sometimes, as far as like making records, I'm like kind of, well, it's been a rough year, so everyone thinks that you could just sit down and write an album when something happens, and it doesn't work like that. And
you can make an album in your bedroom now. Oh, really? Can you?
Write a song about about it, and I can't just sit down and do that. Maybe a few years from now, from the things that happen in our lives, you sit down and you write an album. I'm not expecting to write Quadrophenia out of it,
right?
But it's funny. Like, I go, sometimes I'm just like, well, with the way we get treated.
Like, right.
Why do a record?
Like, to what end? Exactly. Well, I just and I
hate to sound like that, because I love playing music. I'm blessed. I'm like, I thank God so much every day for what we do, and
sure.
and the ability and the gift that it is. But it's like, we should be treated right.
Well, yeah, I think that's I could. Yeah, there's this presumption from people that aren't musicians. Well, you could just say you should write a song, or you should just make an album, and I can think of no other profession where you would just like if you were talking to the owner of a restaurant, like, well, can't you just open another location somewhere? Can't you just get a lease on a building and open up another restaurant somewhere else? Yeah, Like, you can't, like, would you go to an airline and say, like, well, why can't you fly me to England for free?
Yeah.
Or like, fly me over there once and then I'll see if I like it. You know?
You go into a restaurant, you know, like Arturo's. I want my spaghetti and meatballs. I don't expect it for free. They get paid for making me that plate of food.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
it's like, and when we make an album, you know, even as, you know, a session musician or you know, a solo artist, doesn't matter. It's work, man. You know?
There are expenses involved. You know, it costs Arturo's money to get the stuff to make the spaghetti. And I mean, it's funny that you bring up the food analogy. Did you hear Steve Jordan's interview on WTF?
No.
Oh yeah, dude, you gotta. It made me.
Send me that link.
Yeah, it made me go out and buy the first Keith Richards album all over again. I never actually owned a copy of that. My parents had it back in the day.
Man, it's great.
Oh yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, I mean, okay, well, the two things I'll bring up about that. Number one, I went on Amazon to order Keith. What it said, Keith Richards, Talk is Cheap. I'm like, hey, look at this. Okay, so it arrives, and I'm looking at the cover, and I'm like, wow, this is a really grainy looking photo here. I open it up and it's one of those Amazon like printed on demand discs.
I remember you posted that.
Yeah. I
saw that.
I was fucking furious.
Dirtbags.
Like, what the hell is this? And I was so pissed off, and I hope somebody at Amazon hears this, because I filled out the refund deal. And I lied, and they were like, what didn't you like about it? And I told them that the disc skips, which is complete bullshit. Like, I expect the booklet and the thing. I don't want something that I don't want an Amazon's fucking printed.
It was a fake.
Yeah, it's a bootleg. It's like an officially sanctioned bootleg. Only instead of it being like some guy in the village, you know, selling VHS tapes on the street, it's Amazon. So somehow it's legal.
Well, he just he knew what it was. He just got away with it for a minute, you know.
Who?
The guy who sold it.
Well, you know? It's Amazon has a thing. It's called printed on demand, and if you look at
I see.
If you look at the fine print, when there's titles, yeah, it's a thing that Amazon does. The guy from Pugwash, Thomas Walsh, told me that he had a guy bring him a disc to sign at a show. And it was a limited edition single that Pugwash had put out like a couple of years earlier, and it had been out of print for years. And he hands it to him to sign, and he's looking at it, and it's like printed by like some CD printer thing. And he's like, "What the hell is this?" He's like, "Well, I ordered it from Amazon." And he's like, you should hear my interview with Thomas because he's in his Irish bro. He's like, "Oh, are you taking the piss?" I mean, I'm not even going to bother doing his accent, but it was just like, that's what Amazon does now. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And then sure enough, this is what it is. And it says it in the fine print. This title is printed on demand on the order thing. But then I went into Music Matters, which is a tiny, tiny little CD store in Brooklyn on 7th Avenue in the Slope.
Just there?
Yeah, little tiny little storefront. And he had a copy in there, and I snatched it up, you know, with the shrink wrap and everything. Yeah, so I finally got an official copy. But going back to Steve Jordan,
I did hear that interview, actually.
Yeah.
I actually did.
Right. So he was saying, like, you know, with the subscription services, with like Apple Music or whatever, the, you know, Tidal or any of these things, he says, imagine Whole Foods saying like $10, all you can eat for $10 a month.
Yeah.
Right? Unlimited, go in, help yourself to whatever we got in the store for $10 a month. They'd be out of business, you know, before the end of the year. Right? So I don't
kidding.
And yet somehow with music we're sort of expected to kind of, you know, just give it up because we love doing it.
I really cannot stand when, you know, it's that same thing of like you're playing in a bar and the sound's not right and you can't, you know, it's a gig. We could be playing in the Garden one night, and then we're going to play in a bar the next night.
Right. Right.
That's how it's gotten. You can't just say I won't do that gig.
I mean, look, that's always been the case. You talk to anyone.
Yeah, it's always been the case, and someone comes up. It's the same thing as someone comes up to you. Why don't you smile when you're playing? Well, first of all, I have a headache.
Right.
This place sounds like crap. And why are you talking to me while I'm trying to work?
Well,
you're not working.
Right. Besides all that, like, why don't you go over there and like, not interrupt me while I'm working? Again, this is, I mean, look, every job has its occupational hazards, and I just think it now. I guess I'm just so jaded now that or something that it's amusing to me that, again, in no other profession would you go up to someone like. If there were guys, if the Con Ed guys were drilling in the street, and you told them, and by the way, these civil service jobs are, you get full health and pension. They do okay. They do okay, right? But regardless, let's not quantify whether a job is fun or not. Like, you should only be getting paid if you enjoy it, or any of that. There's you would never think to go up to a garbage man and be like, hey, while you're here, can you also clear the leaves off of my lawn, or there's no other profession. And the other thing that I'm noticing now is guys who want to sit in.
That wasn't me the other night at Arturo's. I just said hi and left.
I know. Well, you missed the guy. There was a guy about an hour before you came in. There was a guy that comes over. He goes, "Do you guys know?" And we've been playing for like 15 minutes. This is for you listeners. This is Arturo's, an Italian restaurant in the Village, and I do a duo gig there with a pianist named Eldad Zvaloon. He's amazing, and it's
pretty cool, man. I really like that.
It's awesome.
I caught.
It's a 5-hour gig, 7 p.m. to midnight, and it's a little exhausting because I can pretty much keep up playing jazz, but it takes a lot of brain power. So
you've got to concentrate. It's like I felt like when I came over, you were like almost like a little out of breath. You were like, yeah, man. We were talking real quietly, and I could tell you were like in the gig,
Yeah. Nice to see you. Talk to me a little.
I was just saying hi.
Right. No. And I'm sorry if it came off as anything other than.
No, not at all.
I'm happy to see you always.
I was listening to the changes going.
Right. So
I would probably have a heart attack.
Right. Well, okay, so this dude comes over. We're 15 minutes into the gig. He comes over. Do you guys know Crazy by Patsy Cline?
Okay.
And we were like, and I know it. Eldad's sort of like, maybe, okay. So next thing I know, this dude's picking up the microphone and scrolling on his phone looking for the lyrics. And I'm like, oh, you're going to sing it. Okay.
Well, like hell you're going to sing it. Get out.
Well, I guess Arturo's, that's kind of like the vibe. Like, they have people, like there's a microphone lying around people. Okay, so he's looking for the lyrics on his phone. His girlfriend has got her phone out ready to like film him. And I'm like, oh, I see what this is. This is like, pose for a photo for your Facebook feed of you,
give me shelter.
of you singing with the band. And I don't need to tell you, the guy's got no ear, he's got no sense of where the crazy, and it's not an easy song to just jump in, and he's got no clue where to start.
That's hilarious.
What note he's in, what key he's in, where the downbeat is. Nothing. It'd be like asking me to fly a plane. I mean, it was just, and I'm maintaining my sort of like professional veneer, and inside I'm like, get the fuck out of here, I gotta like keep it together. And it's not my gig. It's not my place to boss anyone around. So I'm looking at Eldad, waiting for him to say something. Like, get the hell out of here or whatever. And
he seems real quiet quiet. And
he's real quiet,
like in his own world.
And I'm looking around for like any of the other staff from Arturo's to maybe manage this. But it's clear that the dude is not prepared, can't do it. And I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you go over there and prepare, have a look at the lyrics, figure out what you want to do, and then come back when you're ready. And they were like, oh, okay. And the girlfriend looks at me and she goes, yeah, he'll prepare. Like she knew what I was doing.
Well, yeah,
and they went off, and then they never came back. What's that? I'm sorry.
It was very perceptive of her.
Right, but again, it would never occur to me to go behind the bar of a sports bar on a busy night and go, hey, can I like serve some drinks with you? Hey, look at me, I'm a bartender. Woohoo! You know what I mean?
How about this one in the sports bar? Hey, can we watch Seinfeld? Can I change the channel?
Right, right. Okay, so now that we've bitch moaned and complained like old men for half an hour.
Oh, forget about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about Tom Petty. What was your first? What was your first awareness of him?
Okay, I would say the first song I probably heard from Tom Petty was "Breakdown" or "Listen to Her Heart."
Okay.
Now at that point, I was like, "Wow, this is really cool," and it sounds like. It's got that Birds and Beatles kind of thing.
And this is what year? Because don't forget, I'm younger.
Oh, that would be the late '70s. Okay, maybe 1980. And then I heard Refugee.
And
then I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Who are these guys?
Oh shit.
And I remember picking up a guitar and just learning that Mike Campbell opening lick.
Yeah.
Which led me on a long career of learning a lot of Mike Campbell licks, and going like this, and then sure enough, Here Comes My Girl, Damn the Torpedoes, I was hooked, and then of course Hard Promises came out, The Waiting, that solo right away.
Yeah,
I mean, I was, A Woman in Love, it was all at the beginning of MTV,
right? So,
watching those videos, and I was going, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers have entered the freaking building, and
right. What was it? Now let me ask you this, because I was a little bit younger. Like I remember hearing those songs on the radio, and I remember seeing those guys, but I'm getting this. 5 times. I'm getting the sense. I know seeing them like on TV and stuff.
Okay.
But I'm getting the sense from hearing you talk about them and people that were a little bit older that and also in retrospect, the way I'm remembering them, that compared to everything else that was going on at that time, because this was like the era of Boston and Foreigner and Kansas and big sort of like arena, and here was like this dude with like the stoner eyes playing a Rickenbacker.
Yep. Right?
Would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a bit? Like how that felt to you? I mean, were you? What was your? What sort of impact did they have on you in the context of the times?
Well, we're talking like the late '70s, early '80s, right?
Yeah.
So, like you, I was always like Beatles, Stones first, everyone else.
Right.
And so those other harder rock acts like Boston, like I liked More Than a Feeling. I thought that was a beautiful song, and every time I go on the road and I'm in other parts of the country, I hear like More Than a Feeling. I hear, certain songs, the soundtrack of our growing up, and Kansas, Carry On Your Wayward Son.
Right.
Now, Kansas, I remember figuring out that stuff when I was a kid, and with Tom Petty, I was like, well, these guys, it's jangly. It's like the stuff that really is in my heart, like the Beatles. It's
right.
Like it's songs written the way they're supposed to be written, from your heart and soul. Not like, and yeah, there were great guitar licks, I mean, those guys have the best guitars ever. The collection, forget about it. It was coming back to the song. It was the song first.
Right.
Mike Campbell never overplayed or played any bullshit that didn't belong in the song. And,
right.
And believe me, like coming up in the 80s and 90s and playing out in the Rock and Roll Cafe, I was playing with some guys, I'm not going to mention names, that had way more chops than me. And, and I felt a little out of place, just because I'm not going to play a Van Halen lick. I love Eddie Van Halen. I love everything that guy's ever played. He's one of my heroes, but it's not what I do, and but I know how to appreciate it. Now with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, I just feel like anytime I'm in a gig and someone plays one of them, I'm like, wait a minute, we got to do it the right way.
Yeah.
It's like I have to play it right.
Yeah.
I have to, Mike Campbell, I know that stuff. It's like, I'm not going to say, like, me and Mike are close, like I met him once.
Right, right. But that's, he was a big influence on you.
That's my wheelhouse. And so I know a little or a lot about every album they did. I remember when Into the Great Wide Open came out.
Yeah.
That album, I figured out probably almost every lick. You got to check out a song, Making Some Noise.
Okay.
It's this big open tuning thing, and I remember when I figured that out, I said, I am now a good guitar player.
It's kind of like the Beatles model, where the song comes first, and then the parts are not secondary, but they were written. The parts were written for the song, and they are essential to the song, and they are just challenging enough to where if you can figure it out, then you kind of grow a little bit as a player. I always tell people when they're like, "Oh, my son just started playing guitar. What should I get for him? Should I get him a method book?" And I go, no, get him a copy of the American Rubber Soul album.
Yeah.
And have him learn those songs. Get him the Hard Day's Night album, because like
learn the fuzz bass lines on Think for Yourself.
But not just that. Like learn the chords to Norwegian Wood, where you're an E, and then you have to play an E minor. Right?
Yeah.
Or there's always, all those early Beatles songs, they've got that one chord in there that's like not in the key that you're in. There'll be a 4 minor, or there'll be a 2 major, or something. Like if you're in C, and then somebody plays a D major chord, or an F minor, some chord that goes out of the key that you're in. That's just tricky enough that you go, huh? Wait a minute, and then that kind of brings you up to the next level. And then
here's a guy who will blow your mind. Yeah. I did a gig. What was it? Last October.
Okay.
Almost a year ago. And it was doing the whole Ram album. Okay.
I've done that.
I have to mention this because Hugh McCracken.
Yeah.
Okay, and Dave Spinoza, but Hugh McCracken especially. I was figuring out the parts, backseat of my car, the solo on Too Many People, and I swear to God, when I was figuring out Too Many People, I thought I was going, okay, I can't possibly play this. It was such a moment, like. But then I was like, I nailed it. Somehow on stage. I got it on stage, which is the most important thing anyway. But when I was home figuring it out, I was going, what were these guys on? And also there's like Uncle Albert.
Yeah.
All those parts. And we all know the stories of the recording, and like Hugh McCracken, he took a cassette home because they didn't have anything on Uncle Albert yet, and then he came back the next day and with all those beautiful parts, and now what I'm getting at is that you think it's easy, people think it's easy,
right?
No way.
No.
I mean, the way that guy did his voicings on the fretboard, you're on your nerves, man.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. And beautiful, and the intonation of those parts is, I think that's harder than jumping on stage and playing, Jump by Van Halen. I mean,
because it just kind of is what it is. You learn this. I mean, it's not to knock that kind of stuff.
No, not at all. I love Eddie. I'm a huge fan.
It's a different kind of thing. Again, using a food analogy, it's a difference between like guys who are like real down home, like smokehouse barbecue guys. Like, well, what's to know? You take a piece of meat, you put it on the grill, it's cooked in 15 minutes, done, right? Or as opposed to like some really complicated vegetable dish with just the right mixture of spices and things like that. There's
that's how Petty's music is. It's real. It's about the song and I can go on and on. I mean, you could ask me about a track on so and so on "Let Me Up." I've had enough.
Right. Right. There's a lot of his catalog that I have not explored, and to be honest, he was just there for me. Like I heard him as part of the landscape. Being as young as I was,
right?
I didn't sort of regard him as like the breath of fresh air that some people that are already pontificating about how like in a world full of like overblown stadium rock, here was a guy returning to the roots and all that kind of stuff. Although that's certainly the case. I was too young to really have an awareness of that. I was like, okay, well, there's like when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, it's like, yeah, okay, there's Tom Petty, there's also Michael Jackson and Madonna and this, and there was just like the spectrum of pop radio.
You were soaking it up.
Within that, there's this guy who does that. When the Wilburys happened, and and that was life changing for me. The first album, obviously, and it made perfect sense that he would be one of the guys in that group.
And he was like a little kid. He was like when they picked him or asked him. I don't think they had auditions. All right, we're auditioning Tom Petty and Bryan Adams today.
Right. Well, it was a Jeff Lynne. I mean, we all know the story.
Yeah.
It was Jeff Lynne was producing Petty and George and Roy. And it all kind of came together that way. And I don't care what anyone says, I am a sucker for like anything that Jeff Lynne touches. And that whole period of Wilburys and Mystery Girl, Full Moon Fever, that era, I mean, that's my shit right there.
Fantastic. That was his peak.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I wore Full Moon Fever out, man. I had that album. My father had that album. I used to play those songs with him. And then, so Into the Great Wide Open was like
you did that one, yeah.
Yeah, that was the Great Wide Open was the next one, and I listened to it like once or twice. I didn't have the same attachment to it as Full Moon Fever.
Well, you know how it is. Like the follow up can either it could either be really good or really bad. The thing about Wide Open, it was much more rockin'.
Okay.
Than Moon Fever.
Yeah.
Full Moon Fever was top to bottom perfect.
Yeah.
But To the Great Wide Open, I mean, it was a little darker.
Right.
There's songs like Out in the Cold and You and I Will Meet Again, which is a beautiful one.
Yeah.
Probably not a good time to listen to that because it's so fresh. But there was Learning to Fly, and there's a tune called All the Wrong Reasons, which is like Free Falling Part 2. It's the same groove. It's kind of like the same kind of thing. Making Some Noise is like a real killer open G rock and roll track.
Okay.
It's a different record. It really is.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to go back to that one. I remember the closing track, "We Were Built to Last."
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. I knew it was good, but Full Moon Fever had like such a specific connection to that record because it was just coming off the heels of the Wilburys, and like you say, like track for track, there's not one bit of filler on that record.
No.
And then after that, for me, the second Wilburys album, there's some stuff on that record that's as good as some of the best solo Beatles stuff, like in like the full spectrum of like the solo Beatles catalog. I would say about half of the second Wilburys album is like right up there with. I mean, there's like
absolutely,
She's My Baby,
Devil's Been Busy.
Well, for me, it's Poorhouse. You Took My Breath Away.
Beautiful.
Holy crap. And then when George comes in, that was the song, whenever, the Facebookian response when somebody dies, that you have to post a link to, the song that you like or whatever. That was the one I posted, was You Took My Breath Away. Just Tom's voice blending in with those guys. It is such an interesting color. You got George's voice and Jeff's voice, and his voice just really complements the other guys there. And then when George's slide part comes in at the end, it's like I'm done.
Yeah, he had a way of just like, well, that's as good as the vocal.
Right. Right.
I mean, when he played slide, now I'm going to keep this in context.
Yeah.
But when George plays slide, especially in the later years,
yeah,
there's this thing that, like melodically, that reminded me of like when Jeff Beck does his certain things,
Yeah.
It's like that, the voice of what he did. And speaking of like being on the edge of my seat, it's like when Free as a Bird came out.
Okay.
When they were doing the anthologies.
Yeah.
I heard the snare drum, and I was watching it on TV, the premiere.
Yeah.
And there's the video and the birds and blah blah blah.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like maybe 3-4 bars into it, I was like, "Oh my God, it's the freaking Beatles!"
Right.
1994.
I thought that right away. That was
George
like
Harrison's.
Like the first thing you hear is like.
On both those tracks, he was like.
That's it.
He was pretty much the high point.
Well,
I mean, a lot of ways.
I would be curious to talk to anyone who was like close to them when they were trying to the negotiations that they probably had to do.
Oh my God!
To make it happen. I heard a story that the day that they filmed them playing together, that they were going to do that they were. I don't know if this is true or not, so I'm not going to perpetrate any kind of myths here, but it was in someone's book that they were going to play Let It Be, and that George was like, no, absolutely not. John's not here.
We did it already.
What's that?
No, it's like, why? We did it already.
Well, but more to the point, like, John's not here. We can't be playing a Beatles song without him. And that they actually, the three of them, like, they called a break. And there's, like, a film crew and everybody. They called a break, and the three of them took a walk. Like, they were on George's property or something. And they took a walk, like, out into the woods where nobody was.
I've seen those videos when they're playing the Buddy Holly tune, right?
Right. But what I'm saying is that was the day that they were filming all that stuff. They called a break and they took a walk like out into the woods where nobody else was around.
Right.
And they like kind of had it out. Like they were in there for like an hour, like out in the bushes where nobody could see them or talk to them, and they like kind of hashed it out and had this conversation, like a very like they kind of, I don't know how heavy it got, but they talked it through, and they came back and they were like, all right, we're just going to jam on a few old rock and roll things, and then that's going to be the end of that. So
right.
I suspect that there was some heavy negotiating going on, and that it ain't going to be the Beatles unless George has his say, and he's like, I'm not the little kid anymore. So Jeff Lynne's going to produce it. I'm going to play lead lines. You're not going to tell me how to play, and because if George pulls out, it ain't the Beatles, right?
Absolutely. It's the and that's why that whole scenario with the reunion, and remember Paul saying about someone suggested Julian. He said, "I feel sorry bringing him into this."
Like, why would you exactly? Why would you put that on somebody? Let's talk about Tom Petty here. In the last couple of years, I kind of dropped off. I picked up a copy of Hypnotic Eye.
I have that one,
and I listened to it like once, and I was like, yeah, this is good, but I didn't really like get up close and personal with it, which of course I'm going to now. Wildflowers! Holy crap! I can't believe.
Oh my God!
Yeah, how am I?
We can't forget Wildflowers.
How can you? And that was, again, you're talking to someone that got introduced to Tom Petty via Beatles, Jeff Lynne, Wilburys.
Sure.
And I had sort of like not really been paying, and I don't know how I got a copy of that album, but I was hooked immediately.
Well, can I tell you one of my favorite songs today?
That's why we're talking. Literally, why we're talking right now. So please do.
Track number 9, and it's called "Hard on Me."
Yeah.
And
it's all I can do to make the right.
It's very John Lennon.
Yes.
It's very, it's just got that, and if you notice the guitar line, it's kind of, sort of similar to do 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 do. It's something off the White Album. I Will or Julia? No, not Julia. Anyway, it's one of those tunes, and every time I hear that song, I just get like this lump in my throat. I don't know. It's just one of those,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to replenish my copy of that album. I'm not sure where it is.
You Wreck Me. It's Good to Be King.
Oh, forget it. Yeah, just Wildflowers, the opening track.
And Ringo played drums on, I think, To Find a Friend.
That's right.
And it's a deep album. One of his,
Yep.
Yeah, it's one of the best.
I wasn't used to like pretty songs coming out of him, but like Only a Broken Heart was gorgeous.
Oh man.
I'm not sure what happened to my copy of that album. I'm going to have to replenish it. I'll have to, of course, go on Amazon and order it, but it's probably, yeah.
People are going to be buying a lot of Petty off iTunes and Amazon now, and it's, not that he had problems selling albums, but
right. But that's sort of like the ritualized response right now. I remember trying to get a David Bowie CD last year after he passed away, and it was like all sold out. Will sign up for notifications when this album becomes available again. I'm like, really? Okay. It just didn't.
Exactly.
That just didn't feel right.
You were talking about Hypnotic Eye. I downloaded that one when it came out, and I felt, a few of the last records, he had a new sound, after Stan left the band. There was it started to go into a new sound.
And
around Wildflower.
As someone who wasn't really following him very closely, how would you describe that?
It started getting a little more heady and mellow and jammy.
Okay.
And there's a tune on what album is it? On the last DJ.
Okay.
I think it's called hold on. Can't Stop the Sun. It's the last tune on the last DJ album.
Okay.
And he does that. You remember how John did the track on Dear Prudence?
Yeah.
With the Gibson acoustic, and they always used to double everything.
Right.
And he had a few tracks that had that same. Knowing them, it was the same guitar.
Right.
With the same mics.
Right.
Those guys know how to make records, and
right.
End of story. And it's just started getting a little more jammy and psychedelic, and I think partially that might have bummed out Stan Lynch a little bit, because they were this rock and roll band. They were like a gang, in the early days.
Right.
Refugee and
and that's what rock and roll, that traditionally that's what rock and roll bands are.
Yeah.
A gang.
Now then they got the great Steve Ferrone.
Right.
And he's a wonderful guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I spend a little time with him, I hope I get to spend more someday and actually maybe play with him.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, that being said, it got a little more, slick, and people are texting me, but I don't care. And it got a little more slick and produced, with the times, But I think the last few records kind of had the same tone on them, since Echo and they kind of had this tone on them. So it's hard, but the songs are always top notch. That's the thing with him.
The songwriting was always top notch, and honestly,
they had a new sound, and some people might not have gone for it and whatever. But I encompassed it all.
Well, what's better? Sounding the same?
Journey.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's like it's 2000, 2005, 2006. Were you going to sound exactly the way you did in 1979, 1980?
No, I mean, and I think I wasn't there. I don't know, but
right.
But I think the way it was going, the stylistic change wasn't appealing to Stan Lynch, and it's like I hear people going, well, the new band and the old band, it's like, well, it's just part of the journey. It's all good. They're all fantastic musicians, and artists like Tom Petty has to change. Look, we all know that there were some albums that Paul McCartney did that we went, oh God,
Right.
I don't want to get into it because we need another 7 hours for that.
No kidding, yeah.
But the thing is that he's just an artist, and you got to try things. And Petty is pretty much on that level.
I agree. Well, absolutely.
He's a Beatle. He's like a Beatle.
Yes. Because he lives it.
He was one of the only ones we had left.
He's one of the guys that he lives it, and what you see is what you get. There's not he's not putting on anything. This is the guy. This is who he is. And I think that's what's making it so hard. It's making it so hard for us, is that he was the real deal. And he continued, in an age today of artifice and
the fake deal
and fake deal. You know what I mean? And he can't, being the artist that he is, he can't not be moving forward and trying something new. But I think the fact that people get so passionate about, like, I don't like the new sound or I don't like the new band, just shows you how seriously people like us and take their music. And when I say people like us, I mean people of a certain age who remember Tower Records, who remember the days before downloading the classic rock era. I'm still struggling to find the words to describe this age. I remember thinking last year when we lost Prince and David Bowie and Glenn Frey and George Michael, it occurred to me, like, you know what? These guys are, time is marching on, and these guys are getting older. We forget. 66. Tom was 66. That's not old to us, because we see Ringo's out there. Ringo's 77. McCartney's out there. He's 75. But think about, like, in the 80s when the old guard jazz musicians started passing away, people like Art Blakey and stuff like that, and these guys were like in their early 70s, and that was considered like you were an old man then, And
look at Jagger.
Yeah, look at all of them. But I'm concerned that this is what it's going to be like for us for like the next, and by us I mean I'm talking about this community of the people that are into this kind of music, this era of whatever you want to call it, classic rock album, classic album, whatever our generation of music is. These guys are getting up there, and I'm just concerned that the next 10 years,
it's going to be. I'm not looking forward to this next 10 years in that respect, because they're all going away. It's my heart's broken. I mean,
so what do we do? What do we do now, Benny? What as not just as fans, but like as musicians? What do we do?
Well, we stay healthy. We go to the gym. We eat right. If the doctor tells you to change something, you freaking change it.
Right.
Don't do drugs.
Right.
Don't smoke cigarettes. I mean, I have a dear friend of mine who I'm in a band with, and we're just starting to really get out there. This new band, and it's rocking. It's great. It's blah blah blah. I don't.
Right.
And he's this one of the best singers on the planet, and one of my dearest friends. And he's like, well, I still smoke 5 cigarettes a day.
Dude,
it doesn't matter. You're 51 years old.
There's one direction that cigarettes take you to, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And that's not. I mean, I don't get in people's faces, but like I watched my grandfather, like every organ started shutting down. And,
my dad, when I was a kid, my mom. I mean, I lost both of them smoking. So when I get sick, people go, "You're a hypochondriac." I'm like, "Oh, really?"
Yeah.
It's like you call me that again, kabam.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you know what? I mean, I had a really rough year. When you lose someone, you get sick. I lost. I don't want to go into a big sob story, but I got sick for like 4 months. I was coughing for most of the last year.
Right.
It's finally going away.
Right. Yeah, you were telling me.
Going away.
Yeah.
And it's just like we don't bounce back like we did when we were 26.
No, sir. No, I mean, and I'll tell you what, I can feel when something's coming on. I can feel it, like in the back. If I'm on a gig, back of my throat, but my nasal passages start getting scratchy. I go, here we go with this again.
You get airborne.
Yeah, airborne, vitamin C. Sambucol is also great. And people make jokes about like, you hang out with a bunch of old time rock and rollers and the conversations are all about like meds. But you know what? But you know what, man? You watch somebody go down and suddenly they're out of commission or whatever. And I think it's a much more subversive and rebellious act to stay healthy.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I mean, I look at a guy like Mark Lindsay, who's 75, 76 years old. He does 100 push-ups a day, sit-ups, he runs, he takes all these supplements, and he's like the Jack LaLanne. I call him the Jack LaLanne of rock and roll. Because he's still out there, like every night he hits the stage. He's like a monster. He's like Mick Jagger. He's like one of those guys.
Yeah.
But I think we also need to appreciate, 24 hours ago, Tom Petty, I was a fan, but he wasn't really like heavily on my radar in terms of like talking about how thoroughly awesome he is. And I hate this thing of like when somebody dies, suddenly everybody comes out of the woodwork as like a lifelong fan.
Yeah, well, and believe me, I could tell the ones who aren't. You make a great point there. Now, you're like an awesome professional musician. So
thank you.
What we do is like we have all kinds of stuff going in one ear and out the other, and you got to learn 12 songs, and then the next day you got to play another 20 songs. Every gig's different, and whatever. Except we all have our regular stuff, but it's like I have been a hardcore Tom Petty fan. I saw the tour with Dylan. I saw the Wide Open tour. I saw them in 2002 in Southampton College or something, with the new band. I saw them twice with Stan and twice with the new band, I think. And you know what? Standing there, especially the last time, because I wasn't drunk. I wasn't hammered and, on a mission. I was listening, and they could do a different set every night.
Right.
Same thing with the Stones and McCartney and Elton John. And Aerosmith, of course. And, I was just kind of, I was just blown away. There's not one bad song.
Right.
And when I saw them at Southampton College, I really, really finally, I was really, Steve Ferroni had his take on the tunes, and it was great. It was it was real smooth. It was different, but it was just beautiful. And they play really gentle on their instruments too.
Yeah, they're
not hammering away.
Right.
It's just, there's no one better at that kind of shit than those guys.
Right.
That's my take on them.
Is there anyone? I
learned from that.
Yeah. What? Yeah, and that's again, I knew. Talking about like the fair weather casual fan versus like when someone dies and there's or someone is in the news, and that there are the certain people in your life that have that connection to that artist. And people send me news items about the Beatles all the time, or McCartney, like, oh, thought of you when I saw this kind of thing. I knew you were the guy to call
You're the man.
about Petty. You know what I mean? So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think we need to really kind of exalt these artists and enjoy them, as they're alive. That's what I'm trying to do now. Yeah,
like I said, when a record comes out, I would go to, the convenient thing about iTunes, you could just check it out. And these days I listen to it and I give it a day or two and and listen to it again. And, all right, I want it or I don't want it, but it's like with Petty, I didn't really question that much. I just thought, the new Petty's album, the Mudcrutch album, the first Mudcrutch album, that's an incredible album.
I got to check that out. I thought that was a great story that he got back with his old band. Mm-hmm. But I never checked it out. It's good?
A lot of guys don't do stuff like that. He's he's the real deal, and so I didn't question it. Like when the album Hypnotic Eye came out, I said, I'll just get it.
Well, me too. I bought that album on the road. I think I got it at I was on tour, and it was one of those late night stops at Flying J or one of those truck stops. And they have a little, and if there's CDs for sale, I always go right over to the CD rack. I was like, hey, it's a Tom Petty record. I should probably get it and see what it's like.
It's not gonna. It can't be that bad.
There's worse things you could spend $15 on. It's the end of the world. You buy a record and it's a lousy record. As opposed to what,
a Tom Petty record. Really, you could get a box of Cheez-Its,
right? Or you could blow. And I've made this point before. You could blow $800 on a friggin' iPhone. Yeah, that's going to be obsolete in 3 years.
I just did. No, I didn't.
Seriously,
they didn't charge me. I'm renting an iPhone.
If you seriously, if you think about the money that people piss away on these music streaming services, where the money's not going to the artist and they're not getting something that they can hold on to for the rest of their life, if it's what's worse? You're gonna nickel and dime. Tom Walsh was telling me this from the Pugwash guy was telling me that he's had people at shows holding up the CD, haggling with them over the price.
Yeah,
the CD's $15. Oh, I'll give you 10 for it. He's like, what? You know, like what else? Like it's like these things. These are things that you're going to have for the rest of your life. That you're going to have a connection to. That's worth every penny. You know, I don't know. I feel like we're reaching some kind of a tipping point here, where it's like, you know, we have to start like regarding our culture with the same kind of reverence and that we used to.
Yeah, I mean, I have this friend who recently moved back to New York, and they haven't lived here for like a long time, and they're like, you know, talking about, oh man, this place is gone and that place is gone. It's not the same. You know, what happened? You know,
right?
It's, you know, it's like, well, you know, I've decided to roll with it.
Yeah.
You know, it sucks that we can't walk into a record store.
Yeah.
Or, you know, Tower Records and the Virgin Mega Store.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I hate going to Times Square, and I used to say, all right, I got to go to the Virgin Mega Store, and I would just walk over and when I lived on 46th Street and just go, okay, you know, and I'd be in there for like an hour, you know.
Right,
and
like time would just vanish sometimes.
You know, and it's like, I'm glad that I could walk down the street and not get mugged anymore.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, for me it was the Virgin Megastore in Union Square, but I can remember just going in there.
Both of them.
Yeah, I remember going in there for like, just if I was running errands in the area. Yeah, I couldn't pass by that store without just like ducking in, just to get away from the street noise. It was like a safe haven. You know,
it's so loud.
And I could do an entire show about Tower Records by my high school, by Lincoln Center, 66 in Broadway, or in Amsterdam.
Yeah,
wherever the hell it was. You know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, I try to, I get depressed about, like all this stuff being gone and people being gone, but then again, I'm like going, well, I'm still here, and
well, yeah, but is it really gone? I mean, if we're sitting here talking about it, and we keep
it alive,
and we've got the records, with like 1,000 little fires. I heard somebody use that phrase recently. I mean, this is just it's the culture. And these are the culture is the thing that makes the world go around, and I think we're at this point now where people, we all want it. I can't talk to anyone. I can't think of anyone that I've spoken to recently that was like, I'm glad Tower Records isn't there. I prefer the new paradigm where like everyone seems to be on the same page about this. So I'm wondering, like, that then how come we're all settling?
When those places were closing down, I was just like, oh, really? I mean, come on.
Right.
You're taking this away from me? I mean, it's like taking my Telecaster away.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Nobody can take your Telecaster away.
Well, yeah, without a huge fight,
Right. You can at least defend your Telecaster. I know.
Yeah,
exactly.
Get out of my house.
Right.
Get out, or I'll stab you.
Exactly.
No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Right.
But no, it's I don't know. I was just like what I was saying about my friend. I was just saying, well, we could either dwell in it or just roll with it. And I'm really gonna try to roll with it because we have no choice. You can't stop change. It's cliche, but it's simple. It's like you can't control it.
Yeah, I wonder when I see like younger people who are into vinyl and discovering all this like quote unquote old music. I'm wondering if it might come around again somehow. I mean, Tower Records is open in Japan and it's thriving over there.
Of course it is. Yeah. I mean, I'm planning on buying a new turntable soon. I always say that, but I'm really going to do it. I'm just going to walk over to Best Buy and say, all right, give me that $200 Audio Technica, and I'll be on my way. Because I really miss my vinyl. I mean, sitting under my computer table, you know.
Yeah.
It's like in milk crates, and I'm like going, I really want to dig out the White Album.
I would certainly not stop you from doing that. I would not say, "Are you crazy?" You would absolutely. I recommend it, and I think the results are in that.
Yeah.
That investment will pay off for you.
Yeah, and then I mean, now there's a thing about the new vinyl that's coming out.
Yeah.
You know, now they're printing the digital mixes on the new vinyl, which is okay, and it looks great.
Yeah.
But you know, I still feel like some of the character of those records are gone, just because how things got, the new age. I mean, so
I have a number of thoughts about that. Number one, I think it takes a very trained ear to really notice that. I think for the average citizen might not pick up on that. Folks like you and me might feel like if we A/B'd them together, and it would take like a really high-end system for you to really notice the difference. But more importantly, that's why God invented tag sales, my friend.
And also, they're expensive now.
Exactly.
Not $8 anymore.
No, right.
So I'm
right.
like going, well, I got my old ones.
Right.
And another thing, that I have to mention.
Yeah.
I know we're probably running out of time, but
I gotta wrap it up soon.
Beatles. I listen to 90% of my Beatles stuff, the mono mixes.
Okay.
In my phone, I just drag the mono ones in, and you know what? I'm like going, it sounds so damn good.
Yep.
They were like even the White Album, which took me a while to warm up to the White Album in mono.
I know, me too. Me too. I grew up with it in stereo, and when Tommy Williams said to me, "No, I can only listen to the White Album in mono," I'm like, okay, but I get it though,
Well, anytime I hear it anywhere in any form, I love it. But it's just, I was in the gym the other day, and I'm listening to Revolver, and it was the stereo one, right? And
right.
I was going like, oh, well, I wasn't used to it anymore. I was like, this, right. and the earbud fell out, and I lost all the drums.
Right, exactly.
I'm like, I got sick of that.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. I mean, first of all, I try not to listen to music on my phone, but if you've only got the one little speaker, the mono stuff is good for that. But like you say, those guys knew how to make records.
Yeah.
And
like the perfect example of the mono thing is Sgt. Pepper, because Sgt. Pepper was this beast. It was this masterpiece beast recording. We've discovered this way of doing it. And, we're layering this and linking 4 tracks together. Blah blah blah. But when you listen to it in mono, they turn into a band again.
That's right. That's tracks. Right. Have you heard the new...
Obviously, She's Leaving Home and, the orchestra kind of stuff, it is what it is.
Have you heard the new stereo mix that came out for the anniversary?
Yeah, my friend took me to a theater in Times Square. They had a screening.
Oh, okay.
I was in this reclining leather chair in a movie theater in the back, in the middle.
Sweet.
Like being at Shea Stadium listening to Sgt. Pepper.
Sweet. Yeah, I was sick. I was sick when I got that box arrived at my house.
Right.
My parents got it for me for my birthday, and I quote unquote had to just stay in bed for the weekend, and I just went through the whole album with headphones on, and they really seemed to capture the character of the mono, where everything was sort of like brought together as opposed to like hard panned.
What I noticed is that because I have the new one too, the CD, and is that it was in stereo, but they panned it in more. So you didn't
Correct.
lose everything.
That's right. That's what exactly. It was it
exactly.
felt like you could hear them playing as a band, which I never you don't think of Sgt. Pepper as a band record. But
No.
they are jamming, and I wrote an article
Lovely
about it.
Rita.
Yeah, right. I said, like, if they had managed to play those songs live back in the day, they would have blown like Cream and Hendrix like off the stage. Okay, can you imagine like the Saville Theater of like a show with like, you know, the Yardbirds, Cream, and the Beatles doing like Lovely Rita and Good Morning live?
I think the other two bands would have said, "Forget it, we're not doing this."
Forget it. Exactly.
They would have been chicken shit.
doing those songs live on stage, but it just felt like them playing, you know, and it had that character, you know.
Absolutely, and we all know, like, if they would have gotten back together at, you know, in the later years, they would have had, you know, and started playing the stadiums again. They would have had some extra players. You know, they would have had.
Totally.
Billy Preston would have been there. You know, they would have had a guy behind the curtain doing guitar parts. I mean, it would have been.
They would have augmented themselves,
brilliant.
but I think it was a very old school, pure thing for them. It's either the four of us or it's nothing. Right?
Yeah.
You know. So
I hate to say it, but I'm glad, you know, they stuck to that, because
yes,
we didn't, you know. You know, look, I'm not going to mention, you know, a lot of bands, they just keep going and going when key members are gone, and some of it's absolutely fantastic, and some of it doesn't work so well. And
but here's the thing, though. I mean, it's don't you think that, like, I mean, look, I'll say it out loud. The Who, right? When they got together in like the late '80s, and it was like Simon Phillips and the horn sections and the background singer, you know, the big Who on Ice, I think was the
this is a good subject to bring up, actually.
Right. It doesn't ruin the early stuff for me.
No.
It's not. It doesn't spoil. Like, I can still put on Live at Leeds, and I'm 15 years old all over again.
Absolutely.
You know, it didn't ruin it for me.
I've seen the Who in the last since I saw them that Quadrophenia '94 tour.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
With Whistle, and then I saw them a few times without him, and every time I see the Who,
yeah,
you know, they sound fantastic. Pete's guitar playing, you know, you
right.
just can't take your eyes off him. It's like when you go to see Paul. You know, it's, you know, whoever's in the band, you know, whatever, you know,
it's the guy. It's that guy. I mean, some of these guys, I think, reach a point where you don't criticize them anymore. Whatever your tastes are, fine. But, like, This is the guy that did this. He created this, and I don't care what you say. You can't take that away from him or from me for loving him. So you can nitpick and go, well, you know, I don't like when he did it. You know, just shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Pete Townsend. Okay, this is like, you know, this we're talking about. It's Pablo Picasso. It's Hank Aaron. It's Joe DiMaggio. You know, superheroes.
They are, and they still are. And it's like when people go to a McCartney show and they go, you know, they bitch about something like, oh, his voice on this, and wait, he's right where he's supposed to be. He still plays. He's the best rock bass player on the planet.
He's 75 years old. Let me
he's 75 years old, and he's doing the songs in the original keys, and he is a god.
Right.
He is a god.
Let me tell you something. I've done McCartney in like with like Strawberry Fields. I do the tribute, the brunch every once in a while.
And we did Let Me Roll It.
Right, exactly. But like portraying McCartney on stage, like in the costume and everything with the Hofner, it is a physical effort to do what that guy did. To play bass like that.
I would think so.
To play bass like that and to sing like that with a big smile on your face the whole time. It is a I mean, it's like running a marathon, man. I am spent after an hour of pretending to be that guy, and You know what I mean? And I'm 45. So here he is, 75 years old, 3 hours, doesn't take a sip of water.
Maybe I'm amazed in the original key.
Right. You go sing Maybe I'm Amazed in the original key when you're 75 and get back to me and tell me that, like, well, it's not the,
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. And, he knows what he's doing. He's like, well, I'm going to scream it if I can't hit it.
Yeah.
And he sounds like an older rock guy,
Right.
and it's
Right.
It's freaking great. He knows how to do it. He knows what he's doing. He's the biggest rock star in the world.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
He's a professional.
That's right. So speaking of professional, how about an hour and 25 minutes we've been at this?
Oh my God! Is that long?
It depends.
I guess you have your editing to do, my brother.
I know. I'm going to put this up as is, like FM radio. You know what I mean? 30 years ago, if someone of Tom Petty's stature passed away, you would turn on WNEW, and there'd be the DJ taking calls. With the two guys rambling. For 2 hours. So
yeah.
that's what it is, and I'm putting it up. And if it's boring for people, too bad.
I hope people don't think I'm an old, burnt out stoner. Believe me, I still have my shit together.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think we're all doing the best we can.
I could still play. Call me.
Yes, I can vouch for that. Well, let's get together and do some playing sometime. Let's put something together.
Yes, and we got to do the pizza hang in Brooklyn.
I know. That's true. I know.
DeFara's, right?
Well, there's DeFara's. There's Spumoni Gardens. There's any number of pizza. I can
figure it out when we get there.
My body can basically process one slice of pizza a month these days, without going like, oh my God, what did I just do?
Bubba, I'm feeling my age.
Exactly. All right.
Oh man.
Well, thanks very much for doing this, and
thanks for asking me, man.
And I'm gonna have the records out, and good luck with the turntable, and I'll have you back on at some point. We'll talk about you specifically.
We'll talk about us.
Exactly. All right, bro. Take care. Be well. Talk to you soon.
Have a great day, bro.
You got it, brother.
Bye. Thanks.
Radio 418.
Listen to music. It's good for you. The website for the podcast is radio418.com. You can subscribe there with a Podbean account, or you can subscribe on iTunes if that's how you roll. Follow me on Twitter at JohnMon, JONMON. Instagram is John Montagna. YouTube.com/John Montagna Music. Facebook.com/Radio418. But anything and everything you want to know about me and what I'm doing with my music is at my website, johnmontagna.com. Great talk with Benny. Can't wait to have him back on. Rest in power, Mr. Petty. We love you. It's the real deal. Going to be listening to quite a bit of that music in the next couple of days for sure. So thanks for listening to this special FM edition of Radio 418. Let me know how you liked it. Drop me a line, johnmontagna418@gmail.com. Maybe I'll do it again sometime. I will see you on the next one. Be well.